Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. This is a quick video providing an overview of the second frame in multi-frame theory, the human resource or the people frame. Remember, these are quick videos that don't cover all of the content, so make sure to go back to your textbook and to the longer PowerPoint presentation that's in Blackboard in order to go deeper into the specifics and make sure to ask any questions that you have as well. So what I want to do here is provide an overview of the human resource story. What is the purpose of the frame? How can leaders view reality well within this frame? And how can they arrive at solutions that provide a really good fit between the organization and the people who work there and want to succeed? Then we want to talk a little bit about a concept that's fundamental to the human resource frame. The needs of people, why people come to work, what they hope to get out of it and what they expect, and how the leader can ensure that they serve as a catalyst, empowering people to meet the needs of the organization while having their needs met as well. And then finally, a quick introduction to what the text focuses on mostly, developing a strong human resource strategy, where an organization creates an effective overall plan that's in line with the mission, that inspires people around common core values so that they want to work there first, and so that you hire talented people or recruit talented athletes or whatever your organization is about. You create it, then you hire well according to the needs of the organization and according to your plan. And then you keep those that you hire or recruit, you keep them happy, you keep them motivated, and you keep them feeling like there's a good fit between themselves and the organization. So remember as well that multi-frame theory is a contextual or situational approach to leadership. So it's concerned with leaders seeing the context of their leadership in a certain way. And the human resource frame or story sees the leadership context as one where the team is a family. But the catch is it's a healthy family, not an unhealthy family, yeah? So leaders leading well are engaged in two functions. They catalyze healthy relationships and they empower those that they're leading by meeting their needs so that they sustain motivation and keep the employee, whoever that person is, engaged and satisfied by ensuring that there's a good fit between both sides. And how do effective leaders do this? They work to ensure healthy relationships between all those involved. And they work toward reciprocity, this idea that the needs of both sides are considered in the decision-making process whenever possible. It's not to say that there's always perfect balance between the needs of the people and the organization. Sometimes one has to take priority. But whenever possible, the leader's basic ongoing challenge is alignment. And when you align the needs of the organization with the people in the org, then they feel empowered. Okay, before moving on, I want to quickly point out something that comes much further along in the text in chapter 17, but an example here that you see that will really help you think through what effective and ineffective leadership looks like in each of the frames. So right now we're focusing on the people frame or the human resource frame. And notice these two different sides of HR frame leadership. Operating well, we just said, the leader focuses on the family, catalyzing relationships and serving others by meeting their needs. But there's an opposite side or a shadow side to the HR frame, where the leader might actually see the organization as a family, want to seek alignment through empowerment, and yet they might actually operate ineffectively in at least a couple ways. First, they might abdicate or just give up their very leadership role when they consider the needs of the people and, let's say, the higher-ups, their supervisors, who are telling the leader what needs to be accomplished, they might just say, I'm not sure, and be indecisive and abdicate their very leadership role. They might become passive when they realize, I can't meet the needs of everyone. So the people pleasers might have a difficult time, even if their natural default of leadership is the human resource frame. They might be tempted to give up their actual influence or to become a pushover or a weakling where the needs of one side of this alignment always take priority. And often this might be the needs of the people where the leader regularly sides with the needs of the players or the workers, and then might be less efficient in accomplishing goals because as the strategy changes or shifts and it becomes less favorable, the leader has a difficult time actually catalyzing people toward the new goals, toward the new strategy. So from now on, this graph will be helpful for you in conceptualizing the good and the bad, or the effective and the ineffective leader in each of the frames. Put the quotes on this slide and the previous couple of slides to get a feel for the tension of the human resource frame, where the leader needs to constantly be aware of the needs of other people rather than just themselves, and they need to balance both sides of the needs equation, especially when the needs conflict, when the organization might have different needs than individuals in a given moment. A quick example right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. Organizations are strapped for cash. They're making financial decisions in uncertain environments, and yet people need to count on a paycheck. They need to know that the company and the organization is reliable and is going to be there for them, even as people understand the need for companies to be frugal and wise stewards of their money. As an employee, I don't want my benefits cut. I don't want my retirement cut, and neither do you. Players don't want decreased playing time, even though they realize the needs of the team come before their need to gather playing time and to put together good film for the pro agents. So into the fundamentals of the human resource frame. People need organizations, organizations need people. Both sides have real needs, and the major question is, how do we bring these two needs into alignment? This is easy when the needs are shared and similar. It's more difficult when the leader has to balance differing and even opposite needs between the two. But it's worth working through the tension because a good fit benefits both people and the organization. And happy people reward the organization by accomplishing goals and transcending their own needs to work on behalf of the organization. All right, so the first half of that, let's call it a needs equation, is the people side. What are the needs of people within the organization? So here, by looking at this chart, we see the psychological theory that is the backbone of the human resource frame. And I refer you back to your text for a really good discussion on things like the difference between the wants that people have and the actual psychological needs that they have, as well as examples of companies who meet those needs really well, and even for a more research-based discussion on the limits of some of these models of human need and human motivation. Quick overview of this timeline here. You'll notice the classic Abraham Maslow's theory of the hierarchy of needs. Notice he's writing in the 50s, but his research didn't really filter into the psychological world until the 1960s, right about the same time as you remember from our leadership theory discussion. Theorists were arriving at these two behaviors that all effective leaders should exhibit. The first was initiating structure and being highly task-oriented, and the organizing function that had been around for a long time. But this whole idea of consideration of others within the organization was a fairly new concept, and many would suggest that this was primarily due to Abraham Maslow's theory that people have a pyramid of needs, starting at the bottom with basic physiologic needs like food and safety and shelter. As those lower level needs are met, then people are motivated to move on and up to seek relational needs and even to self-actualize and to become the best version of themselves that they can be. But they can't do this, Maslow would argue, if their basic physiologic needs are not met. Well, in some ways, many of the psychological theories that followed Maslow were a reshuffling of this pyramid of needs and a refining of the pyramid to more clearly reflect how these needs operate in the workplace. So for now, I'm going to say read up on that in the text. I would also encourage you to take a look specifically at Daniel Pink's theory that we're driven primarily by three outcomes. People want autonomy, they want mastery, and they want purpose in their work. They want to do things that transcend just daily life and themselves. They want to get better at stuff, and they want to have freedom to self-direct and not be micromanaged in terms of the typical daily functions of the job. For now, I would say it's important to notice how the understanding of the needs that people have in organizational life is still emerging. It's a fairly recent science. So as we'll say quite a few times in the human resource frame, the challenge can be to first understand yourself and your dispositions and your personality and how you view things, and then recognize that others can be different, might have different needs, and I need to be aware of the people who I seek to influence. And speaking of our awareness of the needs of people in our organization, here's a theory, McGregor's X and Y, that says that our assumptions about people's needs tend to become self-fulfilling. So the classic view of management, McGregor said, was Theory X. He built this on Maslow's hierarchy, and basically Theory X represents the physiologic needs that all people have that need to be met at the baseline before people move on toward relational satisfaction and self-fulfillment and empowerment. Theory X was the traditional management view. McGregor says this is self-fulfilling, but it's essentially that people in organizations are fairly passive and lazy with little ambition for growth. They want to be led, and the way this sounds is when people say, oh, okay, you need to tell people exactly what's expected of them, or otherwise they will be ineffective. They will call in sick. They will check out early. They will get distracted. The basic idea here of Theory X is not that it's necessarily always wrong, it's that it's a fairly pessimistic view of the reason people come to work. And it says because people are essentially passive and want to be led and will come for the paycheck and little else, then the way you ensure effectiveness and accomplishment of goals is to have tight control, is to have a transactional approach to leadership where people clearly know what's expected if they want to get a paycheck, and you threaten, in some cases, demotion or reduced salary or forfeiting of benefits or additional pay, and you're essentially coercive in order to keep people engaged by appealing to these very fundamental needs of financial security and having a paycheck and a job to return to tomorrow. Theory Y is in a bit of a contrast to this and is more of an optimistic take on Maslow's needs that are higher up than the physiologic. And it says it was essentially a reaction against Theory X, saying, look, we don't want a self-fulfilling prophecy where people just become passive lazy with little ambition because we have such tight control. We also realize that, sure, while people come to work for the paycheck, money is nice, they also prefer to derive meaning from work, to be about something that's more purposeful than just punching the clock. And that if you give them some freedom to self-direct and to make decisions and to set their own goals rather than to be always told what the goals are, then they can actually excel. So, Theory X alone sounds quite antiquated to our modern ears, right? It sounds very unenlightened. It sounds very mechanistic, and it was. But remember the tension of the human resource frame. It's often difficult in times of high stress, high complexity, or ambiguity in the life of your organization. It's often difficult to pause and consider the needs of everybody involved. When the technical quality of your product or mission is really important, or when the consistency of the results really matter, or let's say there are safety issues, or think about compliance in a typical college athletics department. The needs of those around me are nice, but in order to ensure compliance with the conference affiliation and the larger NCAA, sometimes it makes a lot more sense and is quite easier to operate based on an assumption of theory X. And yet, if we do this, as the book says, and I point you back to these pages here, when the needs of people are secondary to coercive structure or to transactional forms of leadership, then people can act out, and they act out in different ways, whether these are student athletes or students in a classroom, or especially highly skilled people who are in higher levels of sport organizations. Take a look at this slide. Normally we would have a class discussion about this, but it provides some pretty insightful examples for those of you who are managers and leaders in training to remember how people can respond in the workplace when they feel like their needs aren't being considered, or if their needs aren't being met in the long term. So to wrap up the last 10 minutes, effective human resource leaders see the team as a family with individual needs that sometimes differ, and their job as the leader is to align the needs of people and to be aware of them. All right. The rest of the chapters related to the HR frame deal with developing HR strategy. I'm going to call it create the strategy and then hire people according to the strategy and keep them. How do you keep them? You invest in them, you empower them, and you promote diversity. You essentially meet the various needs from those psychological theories that we just spent time mentioning. Step one, then, in aligning the needs of the organization and people so that we can meet the needs of both, requires us to actually consider what our team philosophy or our organizational philosophy is. In short, we have to know what we're about if we expect to attract the type of people who can help us become who we hope to be. And this is where people at the top of the organization, remember Mintzberg would call them the strategic apex. These guys and gals get to decide what the mission of the organization is. This is a critical step in the life of the organization because you're going to have to implement it, and you're going to have to seek to live out the very human resource philosophy that you establish. And if this philosophy misses its target, then it falls flat, and people are uninspired, and their needs might not be met within your organization. So, for example, let's start with the bottom here. This is basically the human resource philosophy of the College of Health Science at California Baptist University. Our dean currently has this nice little motto where he says, look, you could work anywhere. If you want to work here at CBU, we ask that you first be nice. Live a Christian relational life where you consider the needs of others before yourself. Be nice. But then work hard in teaching, in research, in serving those around you, and bring value as you work hard and overall as you relate to people through kindness and humility. Pretty compelling for those who are attracted to these values. But if you were to pitch this at a different university, they might immediately question the order of the values. Sure, we like nice, but we really like bringing value through, let's say, research, and we might rank that above teaching or service. So even a professor, a faculty member with a PhD who's in the job search, if they see this HR philosophy, it would be either compelling for them or it would miss the mark. This is what it's supposed to do. I'll do one more, moving up here to a bit of a comic one. Just let this sit with you for a while. Enterprise Rent-A-Car. this is who they're recruiting to work at Enterprise. They could say of themselves, we are the half of the class that makes the top half possible. And while at first this may seem a little condescending, essentially the HR philosophy is to hire and recruit the bottom half of the graduating class of college for that year. That is essentially what they're saying. We are recruiting the B minus, C plus, and below students. Why would they risk that type of HR philosophy? Yeah, maybe because they know, like some of us know, that those who got B's and earned degrees, or C's and below, were some of the most fun, socially engaged, adaptive, yet kicked back and chill and roll with things as they come sort of people. Where the top half of the class can often be, not always, uptight, goal obsessive, inflexible, again, not always. The bottom half of the class are the type that Enterprise, Rent-A-Car, VPs, Director of Human Resources want to hire because of who they are. And good leaders operating well in the human resource frame, if they're going to meet the needs of those they recruit, they want to recruit the right types of people that'll fit into their organization. So in short, step number 1, implementing a human resource philosophy, can seem kind of like a lame exercise because, after all, everybody sort of knows the type of team they want, don't they? And everybody sort of knows the type of company that they are currently in. And yet too often, the text would say, organizations haven't thought strategically enough about setting the hiring and the relating to each other philosophy. And then later on, when problems occur and inefficiency arise, they can look back and say, what happened? And be surprised when goals aren't met and when people are dissatisfied. That is all for the introduction to the human resource frame. Coming up next, I will record a short video and we will continue the conversation about steps 2 through 5 in developing a human resource strategy. Step 2 is hiring the right people. I have some interesting slides designed to get you as a potential hiring manager to think through the differences between skills, abilities, and talents. And then finally, I provide a couple of examples for a human resource model for how to retain the people that you hire. Because obviously, whether we look at collegiate sport or professional sport or even high-level sport business, we can spend a lot of time and resources on effective recruiting or hiring of talent, and we should, and yet we can have a difficult time managing turnover and keeping people happy and retaining them for the long term, where they can actually grow and develop and have a great career with your organization. So that's what I'll cover in the next human resource video. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.